from Down Under.
Do or do not. Please don't try.
G'day, mate. How you going? G'day, mate. How you going? This is Adam O'Brien, the Fantha from Down Under, and welcome to the Fantha Down Under Christmas Special. That's right. As we've pretty much done all of our shows for 2019, this is the last one, and we're going out with quite a massive show. Joining me today is Carl, who is also a fellow Fantha Tracks member, and he's also one of the many Fantha trackers that goes around to many of the London conventions and conventions all around the UK. So it's going to be an interesting chat, and he's better known as Mooncat Drums. That's right. He's a drummer in the UK and has about 3 or 4 different bands going at once. So he's going to tell us about that tonight. And that'll be part 1 of our chat with him, and we'll be chatting with him early January 2019 as well for the second part of the chat. Also, on the tail end of the show, we have Baz and Rohan of Force Material back to have their second part of their chat. And I hope you enjoyed the other episode with them. It was a lot of fun chatting to those two. And if you haven't checked out Force Material as a podcast itself, then you're missing some amazing Star Wars podcasting and just chats about the the cornerstone of where Star Wars comes from and the myths, the legends, everything. So anyway, without further ado, let's chat to the one, the only Mooncat Drums. Carl, how you going, mate? Mooncat Drums, that's right, Carl Bayliss, who's also a Fantha tracker, mate. How are you?
I'm good, Adam. How are you?
I'm really good, really good. And we're going to be chatting some amazing hero's journey today, and it's going to be the musical hero's journey of Carl. But before we get in there, mate, how you been?
Good, yeah. We're nice and busy. You've already touched on it's coming up to Christmas. It's feeling very Christmassy over here. We're just about to hit, I think, -3 or something like that tonight. So, the woolies are coming out already. Haven't done any Christmas shopping, which is a bit of a bugbear. Although I do have lots of Star Wars Christmas paper already, which is I'm nothing if not prepared.
You know,
in them now.
A lot of us get the Christmas tree out and all that sort of thing. And I was looking for Christmas ornaments, and looks like my box of Christmas ornaments has been thrown out when we moved house recently. But I did find another one that inspired a certain Wookiee, and that's of course Mr. Cornelius. Yeah. So I did find him.
Yeah, cool.
Crazy, isn't it?
There's some stuff we've put up on the site this week. In fact, there's a new shop opened close to me. It's a chain called Typo, and they've got some lovely little Star Wars ornaments. I think there was a Stormtrooper, a Vader, might have been a 3PO head, and an R2D2. Those are quite nice because we don't always get the hallmarks stuff over here, the same as they do in the US. But those look really nice. And my daughter's been getting some of these sort of nano blocks, so kind of like tiny Lego, and the clear plastic baubles, and she's been making stuff of those. So I think she's got a Stormtrooper helmet one.
Oh wow!
which will be going up on the tree. So yeah.
Well, I can only think of what Martin Keeler would be putting up on his tree. Is it a Zuvio tree?
He's probably got a Zuvio tree, if I know Martin. There is a fairy on the top either. It's a Zuvio hat, and then every bauble is a Zuvio.
Of course.
That's the only reason that you would have 200 and something 3 3/4 Zuvios. Yeah.
Unbelievable, folks. It is true.
We love you, Martin.
We certainly do. We love you, Martin. Now, of course, we're both fellow Fantha trackers, but one of the great things that you guys get to do in the UK as a team is go to some of these amazing events. We've got MCM Birmingham this weekend at Comic Con.
That's coming up this weekend.
Yeah, and tell the folks what that's all about.
It goes back, if anybody listens to Mark and Dave on Making Tracks, you'll hear Mark refer to it as memorabilia, which is a really, really old name for MCM. And that goes back to probably late 80s, early 90s. And it, at the time when there wasn't really much in the way of sort of comic conventions and things like that. And it was film and TV memorabilia and actors. Somewhere, and I'm hoping it's still in the loft or somewhere like that, I got the signature of the guy who originally played Jabba in the sequences, and it was like he was there. Michael Sheard, who played Admiral Ozzel, was there, and he was in a UK TV show as well called Grange Hill, and he played a sort of really stern teacher at this sort of like kids soap opera kind of thing. And they were literally just sat there, no cues, and it was obviously, sort of a few years ago now, but it was, a couple of pounds, £5 max to get an autograph. And it was, that was their sort of retirement fund. The same as a lot of the actors, I guess, that are doing it now, but it's grown and grown and grown to the point that now MCM in the UK is a major convention brand. They do a lot of the big, the NEC is a massive convention centre. I think they take over usually 2 halls in there, which is big. And they do events in London as well, Manchester, Scotland, and I think they do one in Ireland as well. Not 100% on that, but anybody that's in those parts of the world will know the name MCM. So there's a few of us heading down there for the weekend. I think Mark's taking in the I don't know if it's the Rebel Legion Ball or the UK Garrison, because they alternate between. There's two of these events at the NEC every year. One in March, one in November. So the UKG have a charity ball at one, and the Rebel Legion have one at the other. So I think Mark's taking that in, help them raise some money. And then on musical journeys as well, we've got the New Hope concert tour going on in the UK at the moment. A few of the guys went to the Royal Albert Hall for the UK premiere, which was with the London Symphony Orchestra live playing the score from the film going, which by all accounts was absolutely amazing. And there's a few of us going to various dates on the UK tour. Again, I think we've got a gang of us going to see it in Birmingham on the 2nd of December. And fingers crossed, we may be getting some exclusive behind-the-scenes access as well. So we're hoping to get some interviews and pics and stuff. So again, stay tuned to fantatracks.com, and whatever we can share, we will, because from what the guys have seen it already have said, it is stunning.
Oh, yeah,
it's
definitely.
Proper goosebumps. I was fortunate enough to see John Williams many years ago now, when he actually played with the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra and conducted that. Very much like the concert he was due to conduct recently in London, and it sort of goes through his catalogue, and you hear a live orchestra playing the Indiana Jones theme, the Superman theme, the E.T. theme, and you're just like, can this get any better? And then the final number is the throne room into the end titles from New Hope.
Oh, wow.
I at that point I just nearly died. that is one of my favourite pieces of Star Wars music, and just because it's a bit of a cheat, because it rolls everything from New Hope into sort of 5 or 6 minutes, but just whether he wrote it specifically, but the way the throne room piece seeds into the main theme is just perfect. And every other film, I've always felt it's kind of like bolted on. So you've got the last piece of music in the film, and then it jumps to the main title piece. For the outro credits. But the throne room cue into that is just perfect.
It is, isn't it? There's something about that hook at the start of that piece of music which it's uplifting, but it carries you. It tends to, a lot of people, when they watch a movie, they'll see directed by, as soon as it comes up, they just go, all right, grab the rest of your popcorn, grab your drinks, let's go. It's not the same with Star Wars. When Star Wars has that first blue tile come up, and you obviously got the music play, you kind of want to stay for it. There's no other piece of music like it.
It is really just, people stay to the end of Marvel films for the post-credit scenes and stuff like that, but with Star Wars, it's just a case of just listening to the title music. I mean, what they did with the music at the end of the last Jedi, wasn't it? Where they got the sort of remembering our princess Carrie Fisher, a little bit of Leia's theme just woven in there, subtly, played quite delicately. I just got all choked up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and this is just a piece of music, but that's what certainly John Williams' music can do. The concert that he was due to perform in or conduct in London recently, they played. It was on UK radio stations, and they played some interview footage, both with John and some of his collaborators over the years, and they got a piece from Steven Spielberg, and he said, without John Williams, bikes can't fly, dinosaurs don't walk the earth, and there is no force. And you're like, yeah. And even now, if I listen to certainly New Hope soundtrack, again going back to this throne room cue, I can do the Wookiee growls at the exact point where I know that that's the cue. Well, there it is. The bit where R2 comes wobbling forward because it's like, oh look, they fixed him. So, those sort of things. I've watched the film that many times that and you listen to the music, and I can hear the stormtroopers coming down when you've got the stormtrooper cues going. It's almost subliminal that I've got the sound effects going on in my head, but the music is just
it's brilliant.
And it's all brilliant.
You know what I love too is the not the classic sort of symphony part of the scores. Lapti Neck, perfect example.
Yes. Yeah, I think with those, some of the stuff that they did for the special editions, I know there's a lot of people that don't really say, oh no, I mean, Yub Nub, I actually quite like Yub Nub.
Yeah.
In the sort of the music that they ended up replacing it with in the special editions, to me, felt a bit like it was a cartoon series in the 80s called Mysterious Cities of Gold.
Yeah, it does sound like that, doesn't it? Yeah,
and it's got that kind of vibe going on with it, and it's I was just like, that was great. But I get why they did it, because they were trying to show the sort of pan galactic celebration, whereas Yub Nub is purely the Ewok expression of hey, we won. But that's kind of where we're at with the whole music side. Again, some of the newer films, I kind of get the feeling that they're trying sometimes, and this is no fault of the composers involved, but I think they're getting to the point where it's like we need a Cantina-esque number. So with the Last Jedi, you've got the scene at which is a bit in Last Jedi.
Do you mean Force Awakens?
Force Awakens. You've got Maz's castle.
Yeah.
You've got the similar thing in Solo where you've got. Sorry, my daughter's just come in. Hello.
How are you going?
In Solo, you've got the bit at Dryden's ship, where you've got like a bit of a musical number going on. Rogue One, you've kind of got that creature elements going on when they reach Saw Gerrera's outpost, and it's kind of like, almost taking that hero's journey thing of this is what we need. We need a big piece of here's lots of different aliens with some slightly not so classical, funky music going on. But that said, I love the piece from Force Awakens, the Ojabba one. That is nicely written. So that's Lin. Can't think of the guy's name now. He's in the new Mary Poppins.
Lin-Manuel Miranda.
That's him. Yeah.
He's brilliant.
So obviously he's had a good few years, and he's rightly getting involved. But you look at the way some of the other scores have started to evolve as well. So in Rogue One, you've got Michael Giacchino being brought in. Solo, although John Williams was involved in writing some of the things, you've got John Powell. I've not yet seen Resistance, so I'm interested to see what happens with that musically. Rebels was brilliant. Was that Kevin Kiner, was it?
Kevin Kiner, yeah. I mean, he just goes from strength to strength. Obviously, he had certain things that George wanted to hit back in the day when it started. And George wanted to stretch the musical boundary of what they'd done previously, obviously with Williams and stuff like that. And I love there was little bits of jazz coming through as there had been, but then the rock music was coming into it, and there's quite a bit of rock in Kiner's soundtracks. Yeah,
well, I mean, even you go back to the prequels, Phantom Menace. They started to introduce, sort of more. Not only the sort of choral elements, which have been not featured in any of the, or not heavily featured in any of the original trilogy soundtracks, but you'd also got little bits of more contemporary instruments. So, you've got drums, guitars coming in, underpinning some of the classical elements.
Oh, definitely. Now, one of the things we're going to be talking about here today is hero's journey. And, of course, this is the musical hero's journey. Now, Carl is a fellow musician, one amazing drummer, and I can say that from watching him, but also from my dear pal, Den, who himself has said, going over to the UK and meeting the team, and in particular Carl, has been an extremely rewarding experience. But let me know, Carl, when did you find that music was your thing?
Well, it kind of started when I was still at high school. I actually started out sort of singing. a frustrated drummer, basically because my parents wouldn't let me have a drum kit. They're big and noisy and not very neighbour friendly. So I started off singing and then moved to playing bass. And through the process of auditioning some drummers for a band I was in at the time, and they sort of said, he plays a bit, we'll run through a bit of one of the songs for you. I sort of sat down behind the kit, played this song, and the guy who'd come to audition went, "You don't need a drummer, he's great." I was like, okay, thanks, I think. And that was basically what I got asked then to if I would play the drums for this band. So it sort of went from there, really.
Excellent.
And that was quite a few years ago now.
And who were coming up through that time? Who was the the drumming influences for you? Was it jazz players? Was it I don't know.
I sort of through because again musically I touched all bases through the years. I was a big hip hop fan in the sort of mid '80s. Then kind of went off into sort of rock, metal, so very, very into sort of Metallica, Anthrax, British bands as well, like Iron Maiden and Def Leppard, which I know some people think, Def Leppard influencing a drummer. But the sort of whole story of Rick Allen and what he went through, and then the sort of triumph over adversity and things. That was always sort of one of those inspiring things for me, to see that actually somebody had got a love for this instrument, that sort of pulled him through what could have I've read an interview with him in the past, and they say he says something like, you can't consult the book of one-armed drummers. He was a pioneer.
Oh yeah.
Nobody had done that. And he just, fortunate, I guess, in a way, but because of the era and the fact that, sort of electronic drums were coming, becoming more commonplace, the technology existed to allow him to go on to do, and that accident was mid-'80s, so, you're talking good sort of 30 or so years ago. And he's continued to have a career in, a very, very, still to this day, very popular band. And, they're still recording, they're still touring, still doing massive shows across the US. They're coming back to the UK in December. That's another contract night out. So those sort of guys, particularly around that sort of rock scene. But then, as I started to get a little bit more into sort of progressive rock, so the go-to guys were sort of Neil Peart, Rush. There's a lot of players out there that technically I just sort of look at and go, ouch. They're very good. I'm more of a sort of groove player. One of the things Dean said, was I just sort of sit in nicely in the song and try and play for the song, and that's what I've always done. So, again, from the UK, bands like the Beatles were obviously always played around the house when I was a kid, so it's a big influence on me. Who else?
The Clash?
Yeah, I was aware of the Clash. I wouldn't say I was a massive fan. Again, it's one of the bands I've kind of gone on to discover. One of the first bands I joined sort of when I was in my sort of working years. so I'd actually got enough money to go out and buy drums and things like that. Was a covers band. So from that, you got into the whole. Okay, yeah, we need to just basically be a live jukebox and hit those sort of things. So you're playing your Clash, your Kinks, your Beatles, alongside Monkeys, Fine Young Cannibals, ABBA, anything and everything to try and be a sort of party band. And that led neatly into the tribute circuit.
Oh, tributes are great. Recently, I heard a band playing, and they were doing it, I think, to be the lines of being a stormtrooper. And I heard these lines, and this is what did it for me, because I knew straight away, I knew the chords, dun, 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 dun. And I go, hey, I know that one. And then he goes, when I wake up, it's the Proclaimers. All right, I know this one. And then, but they were doing it with this sort of metal touch, and they were talking about Vader and other stuff through the lyrics. And then I will march 500 miles for, the 501st or whatever the hell it was they were talking about. But again, it shows that you can be a tribute show and a cover show at the same time. And I love when people have that sort of ingenuity.
Yeah. I mean, again, through sort of Fantha tracks and going to conventions over here in the UK, we've got two of the, I don't think it's unfair to say, two of the finest exponents of that particular genre in Blues Harvest and Darth Elvis and the Imperials, who both sort of take some of your classic rock and pop songs and put a whole Star Wars slant on them. If anybody hasn't heard either of those two bands, go out, check them out now. They've got stuff on YouTube and SoundCloud and all those sort of places. And I would urge you to check them out because they are fantastic. There's bands in the US, the likes of High Adventure, that are doing the similar sort of thing. It's nice to have that sort of. You can still rock out, but you can do it sort of with a bit, sort of tongue in cheek. I'll never forget. I went to bringing Martin back into it again. The hashtag Cantina gig before Celebration Europe in 2016, and Blues Harvest and Darth Elvis were on the bill, along with Ash, who are big Star Wars fans, and Darth Elvis kicked into this song, and he sort of did the in-between song and banter with the audience, and Darth Elvis himself is Scottish, and they just went quiet, and he just went, Han Solo, you're a dead man, and kicked into a version of Welcome to Paradise by Green Day, but it's Welcome to Kanja Club. Tell that to Kanja Club. Sorry, kill me next time he sees me. Yeah, so tell that to Kanja Club. And I literally stood there, my mouth agape, going, this is genius.
Oh, yeah.
This is utterly brilliant. And they put the EP on SoundCloud that night. So I was like, right, straight into my SoundCloud account, put it on my favourites list, and spent the whole of Celebration walking around listening to this song. And I still do to this day. It is just absolutely brilliant.
Oh, isn't it?
But it was just that, Han Solo, you're a dead man.
Yeah.
And it just won me from there, but then the rest of the song is brilliant.
I mean, with Elvis, I was surprised he hasn't done Blue Sith shoes yet.
Yes, I occasionally fire him emails and messages on Facebook and go, have you ever thought of this song and call it X. I get varying responses back from them.
Now,
Some
folks,
complimentary, some not so.
Now, folks, I've got to say that there's something very interesting you're going to love about. It's almost like the game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, and this one we're going to do the same, but with Den of F105, because he has inspired somebody here to get involved not only in music but the fan community with music that he's done himself. So off air, we just chatted about just how close this circle of musical family really is. But so Carl, tell us about how you guys, first of all, you know each other, obviously, but he's inspired you. I didn't even know this.
Yeah. So people may know Din was a singer, songwriter in a band called The Souls, Soles. And they did a song for Jimmy and Jason of Rebel Force Radio, called Rebel Force Radio. And I used to listen to the Rebel Force Radio sort of network of shows. Sort of, at the time, there wasn't a lot of podcasts that I listened to, so all the shows on that network were sort of my commute listen. And I heard this song and I was like, oh, that's really good. And around the same time, Mark from Fantha Tracks was co-hosting another show on that network. And it was a UK-based show on this US network. And I sort of started thinking, that'd be really cool to do. The UK has, a very rich musical history. The Midlands, where I'm from, has, a lot of musical history bands like Duran Duran, Black Sabbath, Slade. So you're covering lots of different styles. And I thought, it'd be cool to do something for them to sort of, along those sort of lines that Dim and the Souls have done, but with like UK music styles. So I hit upon the idea of doing some little jingles in sort of various styles. So there was a punk one, I did a little George Formby ukulele piece with a very, very bad Yoda impression after it. I did 2 versions of that one. I seem to remember there was the Yoda one and a sort of George Formby voice. So it was this sort of little ukulele riff, and it was just like, turned out nice again, ain't it? But then I did the Yoda version, which was something along the lines of, turned out again nice, it has. So, yes, apologies to anybody that does Star Wars voices there, because I have a go, but so that inspired me to do these jingles, and through doing those, sending them off to Mark and I became friends, and when Fantha Tracks was being born, he asked me to jump on board and sort of help out as a contributor and a member of the team. Martin Keeler, who we keep mentioning, I have to call this the Martin Cast.
The Martin Cast.
He told me that Din was coming over to the UK and was looking to do some shows while he was over here. So I, through some friends of mine who run an open mic night at a venue local to me, was like, yeah, we can get him like a feature set. So he's, instead of the usual sort of 3 songs, 15 minutes, we can get him a longer set to, showcase his music. He's coming from Canada at the end of the day. Don't really just give him the 3 songs and write you off stuff. So he came up from London. He'd been stopping with Paul Bacon in London, He'd done a couple of shows in London, came up to the Midlands. I was already playing the open mic with another of my bands. So as he came in, I was on stage. I came off, met him, had a chat, and that's, other than sort of messages on social media and stuff, that was the first time I physically met him. And I'd said to him on social media, if you want me to tap along on a couple of songs, let me know. And he was like, oh yeah, absolutely. The whole F105 vibe is that, if I pick people up along the way that can be part of the experience, then that's great for me, and hopefully enjoyable for them as well. So I start recounting exactly this story to him, and then I didn't realise till I listened to a podcast, I didn't make the connection that you were the singer of the Rebel Force radio song that led me to be in, sort of doing these jingles that turned me into a Fantha tracker, and through the connection with Martin, we've arranged this gig, and now you're here, and I ended up playing drums for the whole set for him. There you go. Six degrees of separation.
Unbelievable.
Next up here in the show is Rohan and Baz from Force Material podcast, here to chat some Star Wars on Fantha from Down Under.
You can sort of go back from Finn's Stormtrooper designation to the very beginnings of the concept of the Force, which is just following one rabbit hole down after another, but it all kind of links up. So basically, like I said, there's a podcast on it, but I'll try and do the Cliff's Notes version in a minute. So FN 2187 obviously was the number. It's in the original the films. It's Princess Leia's cell number, but 2187 actually goes back further than that to a film, an experimental Canadian short film by a guy called Arthur Lipsett. Which Arthur Lipsett was a huge influence on George Lucas when George Lucas was a film school student, and because he would do these weird kind of non-narrative, kind of montages of just random footage and random noise that he had lying around that other directors with the National Film Board of Canada had kind of just left over from their projects, but he would put them together in a way where they kind of made sense and kind of had an underlying, sometimes they'd have an underlying sort of point to it. And one of those films was called 2187, and it was the film that George saw that really kind of opened his eyes to experimental filmmaking and the possibilities of what you could do, outside kind of traditional Hollywood filmmaking. And in 2187, there's a scene where, not a scene, but there's a little clip. There's an audio clip of a guy, Roman Croytor, who was another director. He was a colleague of Arthur Lipsett's at the National Film Board of Canada. And he's talking about the whole point of 2187 is it's all kind of the ways that spirituality kind of clashes and rubs up against sort of just the mechanized reality of living in an industrial society. And but it's not that highfalutin. It's 10 minutes. It's fine. But at one point there's a quote from Roman Croytor where he says, some people believe there's kind of an invisible, I can't remember the exact quote, but he basically says there's a force that connects everything. And so that's where this experimental film that George Lucas saw when he was, a film student, is where the phrase the force comes from. And then if Roman Croytor, the guy who said that, whose audio was used in 2187, he happened to, he wasn't even the director of 2187. He was just another guy at the Film Board of Canada where there was some audio of him lying around. But he happened to create a bunch of sort of, he created the short film Universe, which was narrated by Douglas Rains, who also did the voice of Hal, the guy who died just today. But then he went on to he created these sort of documentaries that he would display over like multiple screens, and they were sort of these art installations that could only ever be shown at like film expos or like literally like Expo 67 or things like that. So then eventually he found that there were some other people doing a similar sort of thing, like they were making films across that needed to be, that was so big they needed to be seen across multiple screens, and eventually they were like, hey, what if we sort of put our efforts together and we came up with like a more practical way of displaying these movies? So they created a thing that, unfortunately I can't remember the original name of it, but it eventually became IMAX. So the guy who was like just offhandedly mentioned this idea of the Force in an interview, which then as an audio snippet of got picked up and put in this movie, the short film 2187, which inspired George Lucas. Completely separately to that, also invented IMAX cinemas. So then when you go and see like The Force Awakens on an IMAX screen in 2015 and there's FN 2187, like all these weird little threads and rabbit holes from throughout like the 20th century kind of come together in like this bizarre way that I don't even know if like J.J. Abrams sort of like intended necessarily. So yeah, stuff like that. Like you can go down those rabbit holes forever if you want.
Oh, that is amazing. What about you, Baz? Is there something that you guys have talked about that's really sparked your interest to go, oh wow, I'm going to follow this and just go with it and just see where it goes?
I love the little weird connections too. I think one of my favourite ones is that John Bon Jovi's first ever job was a Star Wars Christmas album. That was our Christmas podcast last year. We went into Christmas in the Stars, but John Bon Jovi was basically trying to get his demo heard by people, and he was sweeping floors at his uncle's recording studio in New York when this guy Miko Bernardo came through and wanted to record the Star Wars Christmas album. They had to do it super quick to get it out in time for Christmas. They only had a few weeks to do it, and they enlisted like a Broadway, lyricist to try and help them get the words and everything together. And eventually, they needed someone to sing lead on a track called R2D2, We Wish You a Merry Christmas. And little John Bon Jovi's sweeping floors, and his uncle said to him, "Do you want to do this job? It's probably cash in hand kind of thing." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll do it." Yeah. So John Bon Jovi's first recording credit on a weird Star Wars Christmas album from like 1978, I think it was. So bizarre.
Well, you're ready for something even more bizarre. Check this out. So John Bon Jovi in a Headbangers Ball album from, I think it was 96 or 97, I can't remember. I remember it really well because I was into the Brazilian heavy metal band at the time, Sepultura. So I was flicking through because it had a Max Cavalera interview, I think it was. But the first couple of pages I had to get through was all about Bon Jovi. I'm like, Bon Jovi. And then there was a Star Wars quote in there. They said, he is like the Luke Skywalker of heavy metal.
Is that a compliment? I don't know.
Well, he's from New Jersey, right? He's from New Jersey.
Yeah.
So if there's a bright spot to the universe, he's in the place that it's furthest from. So,
yeah. And then, in Solo, Han Solo and Kira basically embody the spirit of Tommy and Gina from his songs, The Tommy's Don't Fit the Dots. And, Han Solo comes from that kind of New Jersey steelworking background where his dad got started living and probably drank himself to death. You know what I mean? There's a very Bon Jovi feel to Corellia, isn't there? Is that taking things too far? I don't think so.
No, I think we've just launched our Bon Jovi podcast. I think we're going we're going in a new direction.
Well, he's in Brisbane in a couple of weeks. We could probably get him.
Oh, perfect timing, Bess.
What I love about it too is that you can get to those things. I think one of the interesting ones was I was doing a podcast with a couple of friends last year, and we were talking about Robotech, the old anime from was the early 1980s. And Carl Bayliss, who put those three separate little animes together, one of his first jobs as well was on Star Wars in the marketing department, apparently.
Yeah, right.
So, I think he just had a look, George put all this together. And he probably saw it, knew what he could do, and then worked for Harmony Gold. So I remember hearing that in an interview with Carl, I think it was just before he passed away. And I'm like, really? I never read it anywhere. But then that makes sense to the fact that he's taken... You think about that's three separate stories wrapped together around, mortal heroes. that go on and become legends, and it's very much like the story that we all know so well. You know, it's amazing. And I think that's it's influenced another thing, you know, and it moves into the animated world. And I know many kids that have come out of the the late 80s, early 90s, that was their Star Wars in a way. For every morning they sit there with Aggro's Cartoon Connection, get through all the Aggro rubbish, and then watch Robotech every day.
And then we have a Star Wars version of anime in Resistance, which is, come full circle again.
And has a stated Robotech influence. The guys working on it have talked about being like fans of Robotech. So yeah, it's full circle always.
It's funny how it comes around like that. Now, we started with Rohan on this. I want to get your feelings about where is this story going to go with the next film, Episode 9. Where would you like to see it all go?
Oh man. So for me, it really comes down to like what's going to happen with Kylo, because I feel like he's basically the sequel trilogy is his arc essentially. Like, I mean, obviously, like Rey is an amazing character, and Finn and Poe, but we kind of know like, well, Rey's going to be a great Jedi Master, and Finn's, he's the hero of the Resistance now, and he's fully embraced that. Poe's become a sort of a wily general. He even just over the course of The Last Jedi, we saw that arc play out. So I think when you talk about Rey or Finn or Poe, in terms of like where their stories are going to end, I feel like a lot of that was already kind of established in The Last Jedi. Like The Last Jedi did a fair bit of the work for those guys already, in terms of like, well, they at the end of Episode 9, presumably they're going to be doing the same stuff that they were. The end of Episode 8 tells you what those guys are going to be doing in Episode 9. So what's interesting is like, well, what happens with Kylo? Because the end of Episode 8, he's set up as this sort of kind of incompetent tyrant. So he's ruling the First Order, but he doesn't really have the mentality for it. He doesn't really have the discipline for it to be ruling a galaxy. So I assume that if this time jump happens, so me and Baz have talked about this a lot. Like we think there'll be some sort of time jump in between Episode 8 and 9. And hopefully it's fairly significant. And then by the time you get to Episode 9, you can just see that the galaxy's just gone to hell under Kylo's rule. Because, this is a guy, he's basically a lot like Trump, in that he's not a man who like strategizes or really plans anything. He just reacts to things that happen. So, you could see that really being a problem. Whether or not they can redeem him, I think, is going to be the central question of it. And it's so interesting because I think it goes, I can sympathize either way, like with the Reylo crowd who really want to see, Kylo like find redemption, and maybe he teams up with Rey somehow, and who knows. But then on the other hand, you look at like, gestures broadly at the world for like the last 5 years or whatever, and you're like, I want to see that guy get his comeuppance. I want to see the toxic white entitled, you know what I mean? Like I want to see that guy. I don't want to see him be like the hero at the end of it. Like I want to see him get his just desserts. So I don't know. Like I honestly think it could go either way, and I'd be pretty happy either way. So that's a complete cop out of an answer. I guess my answer is I don't know. And I'm trying not to go in with any really clear expectations, purely because I think that's where a lot of people went wrong with The Last Jedi, is that, it didn't do exactly what they wanted it to, and so then they hated it. So I think with Episode 9, all I really know all I'm confident in is that there's going to be some sort of time jump. We're going to see Poe leading the Resistance. Rey is going to be a Jedi, this hero, this Jedi master sort of figure, and Finn. We've talked a bit on the podcast. Like Finn will hopefully be leading something I really want to see, and I know Baz really wants to see as well. Is like Finn maybe leading like a squad of like ex-stormtroopers, like picking up on that plot thread of like. So in The Force Awakens, he wakes up and he's like, oh hey, are we the baddies? And suddenly he's like, he becomes a good guy. And it's kind of like, well, surely other stormtroopers are capable of having that breakthrough as well. And you see in the deleted scenes of The Last Jedi, he's openly trying to kind of recruit the scene where him and Rose are on the big Star Destroyer and they're surrounded by stormtroopers. Like, he's trying to tell them, hey, look, these guys you're working for, they're not who you think they are. You should, you should throw off the shackles and whatever. And so to see maybe a continuation of that in Episode 9 with him leading his own squad of ex-stormtroopers would be a cool redemption arc. So, long story short, I don't know.
All right. Same question, Baz. Where do you think Episode 9 will go?
No, well, yeah, we have talked about this a lot, and I'm 100% in agreement with everything Rohan said. I want to see all of that stuff. But in terms of, it definitely is Kylo's arc. Kylo's the new Anakin, basically. And I really want to see him redeemed at the end or come back to the light, but not in a fleeting way like Darth Vader did. He came back just before he died. I really think I want to see Kylo continue on and have to live with what he's done and find a way to make that work and find a way to make the galaxy a better place and make up for it. Do you know what I mean? Darth Vader got off a bit easy for someone who slaughtered a room full of kids just to sort of at the last second go, yeah, I'm good now, it's okay. That's a bit easy. So, but you know what? I don't think that would make much of a compelling film because we're essentially talking about doing a lot of mental health work with Kylo Ren over a period of years and bringing him back around and sorting out his issues. That wouldn't be very compelling as a film. And if it happens by magic in some kind of force vision or in a couple of minutes of screen time, I'm not going to be satisfied with that either. So it's a vexed question there. I think there's good in him. I'm kind of a Reylo, I don't mind that. I don't mind the idea of a relationship. I really thought it was going to happen in Last Jedi, and then he blew it and showed that, showed his true colours and dipped back down into the dark again. Because I thought he was coming up at that point. He's in a really bad place now. But I kind of think that if he's such an incompetent leader in the galaxy and his own men turn against him and kick him out, that could be the thing that starts him on the path towards realising what he's done. Definitely.
I think the big one is Hux. Look at Hux. Hux is unhappy. He's just been thrown around a walker like a piece of rag doll. And, you can see he's like, this guy doesn't know. And it's literally going to be, like you guys say, Trump. It's chaos. Yeah. Chaos leading this war machine is only going to... the universe is going to be an absolute array if there's a 10-year time jump. So one of the things I'm interested in seeing is... this is something a listener came up to me about, and he said, hey, Adam, Yoda turns up on Ahch-To, and you watch it, he's sort of interacting with what's around him. He's kind of a bit more mortal now. I said... Yeah, I get that. And I ran with that. And then I had Lucasfilm's Adam Bray on, the guy that does a lot of the DK books. And Adam said, well, that's nothing new. That's happened before. I said, no, the ghosts never interacted. He said, yeah, they did. Remember Return of the Jedi and watch it very carefully when Kenobi first comes out.
Sits on a log.
He sits on a log and brushes the branches. He's just like, look at the branches, kind of like... Oh, here's a log. You can sit down and brush the branches away.
Well, yeah, man. If we're talking Return of the Jedi and Force Ghosts, this is a theory we've kicked around on the show before. Because in as well as Obi-Wan sitting on a log and moving branches and stuff, in the original script for Return of the Jedi, there was going to be a lot more Force Ghost interaction. So the fight with the Emperor in the end. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda were going to sort of manifest and help Luke take on the Emperor. And I think Darth Vader was probably going to switch sides about half, somewhat like he does in the finished movie. And then afterwards, like in the real early script stages, they would sort of be rewarded for their efforts by they would actually be brought back to life at the end. Like at the Endor celebration, Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi show up like, hey, our job in the spirit world is done, so we're back. We're just here to chill on Endor with you guys now. So I think maybe, JJ loves to kind of reference the original trilogy, and we've talked on the show about he loves to also some of his ideas seem to come from ideas that were kicked around for the original films but not actually used. So maybe something that we could see in Episode 9 would be. Ghost Luke helps Rey take on Kylo and hey, get everybody involved. Ghost Yoda, Ghost Obi-Wan, whatever. And they're all throwing down with Kylo. Because I do want to see, and I don't know where you guys stand on this, but even if Kylo is redeemed, I hope we get a really great, like, Rey versus Kylo, knockdown, drag out, brawl to end them all kind of battle between the two. Because what Episode 8 did, like, there's all, people would sort of say, oh, it didn't really leave Episode 9 anywhere to go. And, like, I think that's sort of crazy, because what Episode 8 did is it set up this thing we haven't really had in Star Wars before, where the two most powerful Force users in the galaxy are on opposite sides of the Force. So there's no Emperor type figure in the equation. It's just, you've got Rey and you've got Kylo, and one of them's good and one of them's bad, and they're going to throw down in Episode 9. It's going to be pretty epic. So even if Kylo does come back to the side of the light, I hope they kind of deliver on that setup in Episode 9 first.
Oh, yeah, and I hope we get our little Knights of Ren battle, too. They keep talking about these Knights of Ren, and they rock up and they go, hi, I got a pitchfork, I got a sword, I got a blaster. And they're like... and they need to make good on it. I mean, JJ, in his Star Trek films, he said, hey, look, I've got Klingons. Look, I got Klingons. Then did nothing with them. Yeah. Got to the second movie. Look, I got Klingons, but you're only getting them for 2 minutes. And then so you got this great design that the guys did, and Ireland went nuts doing all the work with. Was it Neil Scanlon to put the outfits together, and they were great. But again, it's the same with the Knights of Ren. You got this great. Obviously, it's Luke's students, but I got that straight away. The ones that went, hey, this guy's going to teach us actually how to fight, or whatever it is, So, they've run off with him, so they're not Jedi Knights of Ren. But, again, and when I saw Last Jedi, I kind of thought, well, maybe Snoke's just rehired them and given them a red overalls.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, that would be disappointing, because then it means we're not going to see them again, because obviously Kylo and Rey have dispensed with those guys. But I do hope we see the Knights of Ren in episode. I mean, like you say, they're obviously, I think, the other students. It's his. I think Baz has called them on the podcast before. They're Kylo's trenchcoat mafia. Kylo's essentially a school shooter, and those are the other school shooters. So I mean, hopefully we will see them around in Episode 9.
I think during Episode 8 they must have been off like fighting Snap Wexley. So whatever he was doing, they're doing the same thing. So
Or maybe,
unfortunately, Charles Soule's Poe Dameron comic has already filled in all the blanks there, and there was no sign of the Knights of Ren. But they're out there somewhere, damn it.
Yeah, they are. They're like the theory of Chekhov's gun. If you have a gun on stage in the first act, it has to be fired by the end. That's the Knights of Ren. You can't set something that cool up and then not use them.
Well,
absolutely, 100%.
It's like Constable Zuvio, which was all set up with this amazing thing. And you guys will love this, because at our website we have our guru for YouTube. He does all the channel videos and stuff. His name's Martin, and when Martin puts all this stuff together, he's always like, we've got to put a bit of Zuvio in there. And I never understood what his fascination was. And then he took a video of his collection room, and I said, hang on, what are you collecting? He said, Zuvio. And I had no idea what he meant, but he literally will go to, whether it's when Toys R Us were closing up in the UK, he went to every one of them and bought every Zuvio. So he had boxes of Zuvios.
Wow.
And every time we on our Fantha Tracks message boards, he'll go, look, found another 40.
He's going to start his own Zuvio landfill. Aliens that come like 2,000 years into the future once we've all, died out. You're going to dig up like...
The aliens will be like, looks like they really loved Atari ET cartridges and Zuvio figures. This is what the humans loved.
Well, you just think about, like, crikey, of all the things you can collect, and the guy wasn't even on screen. But I remember seeing a little bit of, I don't know who it was, might have been one of the makeup and effects guys talking about there was almost 100 minutes of extra footage shot by JJ, especially around the Jakku set. And so there was a lot of footage ready there. Why not turn it into a little telly movie on Zuvio PI?
The Disney Plus streaming service is going to need content. That's all I'm saying.
But we're going to come down to Zuvio PI at some point, aren't we? Really?
We'll get there.
Yeah,
it's Andy Warhol. Everybody's going to have their 15 minutes thing with the Star Wars characters. That's what Disney Plus is going to be.
Oh.
Maybe we'll get the backstory of how Will Rohood got his ice cream maker on the
We 100% will.
Yeah.
You remember that prop is literally on the set of The Mandalorian. Like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
going to happen.
It's going to be amazing how many they tie into the Mandalorian. It's at the right time to have even a solo rock up and just go, oh, yeah, I'm here on this planet, blah, 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 you know, we're going to refill the Falcon, you know, whatever. You have a couple of Wookiees coming past. I mean, you know, you never know. You could even see Low back up. Who knows?
Yeah. and similar to one of the exciting things about the Cassian Andor series is I'm really hoping we might see Aaron Kellerman play Emphas Nest again in that series.
Yeah.
Like if they're both working for early rebellion cells, maybe they'll encounter each other, and that would be really cool.
And Warwick Davis.
Or just give,
Just give Emphas Nest a series.
Yeah, just give Emphas Nest her own series, 100%. She's a superhero in the Star Wars universe. Like, she's a new type of character in Star Wars. Like, she screams out for her own TV show.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
And I agree, K2SO will be in there. And we were only talking about it with the Fantha crowd about how is this ILM TV division going to put that together. And I think it's going to come down to how Star Trek's been doing it for years with live action. Minimal CGI and actual practical models. I mean, they could do it like the T-800 even, you know, like... There's only so much CGI they did back in the 80s with that stuff. A lot of it was Stan Winston's work with the robot. It's a robot. You can use metallics.
Yeah. I thought Discovery worked really well in terms of effects. I think all the effects work on there was great. So, Star Wars only has to be like half that good, and it's still going to be good enough. But, it's probably going to be twice that good. So, we're all right.
Definitely.
Or even you look at something like the Arrowverse, like they don't really have any sort of budget, but they seem to be, the effects are passable, and as long as the storylines are good and the characters are good. I mean, that's the whole sort of formula for those shows is like every episode's got to have like one action scene, one really emotional scene, and there's some other. But yeah, and I think like if they can incorporate that into. As long as we just get really strong character beats with these Star Wars shows, I'm not that worried about the effects.
Yeah.
Oh, same here. I think at the end of the day, we're getting so much coming at us. Who would have thought about this 15 years ago when George was, going, well, I'm going to do a Clone Wars TV series. George would just mill about. I think the only thing that really frustrated a lot of people was that George would just go, I've got a story for a Clone Wars episode. I'm going to put it 2 years ahead of the other one and have this one down here. And you had this, it was all over the place. And I can't remember who it was. It might have been Leland Shee had talked about how, well, I can map it out, but you ain't going to get that in production. You're not going to be able to go, this DVD goes here, this DVD goes there, but they're all, because all the episodes are trapped on one DVD to go over here to there, and I'm like, far out,
Yeah.
So, I mean...
in Clone Wars, they didn't even care at the end, They just, We'll jump forward back in time all the time. It's fine. People will follow along or not.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. I do wonder.
It's crazy, like to think. Sorry, I was just going to say it's crazy to think like George Lucas he's such a visionary. He's maybe the one of Hollywood's greatest visionaries, and yet by the end of the time that he was running Lucasfilm, his vision it seemed like he couldn't see anything more for it beyond just doing the one cartoon series at a time, and now Disney have just blown it wide open with I don't think anyone before the Disney sale would have thought that we'd be getting a movie practically every year, multiple live action TV series at the same time, multiple cartoons. Like it's for good and bad. I've talked on the podcast before about I would actually kind of prefer if they just scaled it back down to like the movies and then, the books and the comics if you really want. And I'm not as big a fan of the TV format, but obviously, they're squeezing every last drop out of the license. It's hard to argue that.
One of George's quotes that sticks with me is he said that just before the Disney sale, he said, why would I make any more when everyone yells at you and tells you what a terrible person you are? And now I guess like after the Disney sale, people are now yelling at JJ, yelling at Ryan, probably going to yell at Jon Favreau, going to yell at Filoni. So he's divided the yelling into a manageable amount for each person, I think, which is good.
But he did have his last sort of, I suppose, stamp on Star Wars. He said, I need to get Liam back in here. Let's get Liam. Let's get him back. And they sat down and they did that. Was it the Lost Missions or whatever it was? I remember watching it on Netflix, and they sent Yoda out on his little TIE fighter, which was cute.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
The kids got a little Lego vehicle out of that, so it was good for the niece and nephews. But getting down to it, he really stripped back down to what the Force was, how it worked, why it worked in the way it did, how you can get ghosts and all that sort of stuff, and the idea of the living Force and the cosmic Force.
Yeah, we've done a podcast on that as well, on what the quills are, and how they kind of link into all that stuff too. So that's a fascinating area of the saga that I think hasn't properly been mapped out until that Clone Wars kind of arc, really, or at least there were lots of bits of mythology lying around that no one had really gathered up and put into like a cohesive form. And even after watching that, I'm still sort of, I don't really know what the Force is. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, you look at the ideas that he said he was kicking around for sequels before the Disney sale, and or during the Disney sale, I guess, when he still thought he was going to be involved. And they're so different to what we got, and they do seem like, it seems like he was going to go a lot more in depth into like what the Force is, what the wills are, the cosmic Force, the living Force, all that sort of stuff. So that's all territory that like someone can explore further down the line, I guess.
He called it the macrobiotic world, didn't he, of the Force?
Yeah,
It doesn't sound like I really want to watch that.
he would have made it. He would have made it.
Yeah, I guess he would. I just keep getting, when I hear macrobiotic, I get visions of like someone shrinking the Millennium Falcon down and inserting it into Jedi's bloodstream or something,
What?
Like Ant-Man, like the Fantastic Voyage.
Inner space?
Yeah.
Dennis Quaid.
Exactly.
Unbelievable. Well, before we wrap, guys, what can we look forward to in the next coming episodes of Force Material?
Well, for the next episode, we're going even further back than the Hidden Fortress, which is our current episode, and we're going to look at the adventures of Robin Hood. So the classic Errol Flynn Robin Hood movie from the 30s, one of the really classic adventure films, which... look, we'll say it was deliberate, but is accidentally coming out the same week as the new Robin Hood movie is released. But it's really just because, that's a movie we've always wanted to tackle on the show at one point, because George Lucas has talked about, how much he loved that movie as a kid and how much it influenced him in terms of just his sensibility for, big screen adventure Technicolor filmmaking. So,
I'm knee deep into the notes on that one right now. So there's a lot of interesting stuff coming out that I hope we'll be able to get across properly. Awesome.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. Again, Robin Hood's such an exciting, character, mythology, and it's been done so many times as well by directors out there trying to get to it. I mean, what was the most recent one? Was probably before this one. Was it Ridley Scott's one?
The Rusty Crow?
Yeah, the Rusty one. Yeah. Which was what it was, I suppose.
I'll never besmirch the good name of Ridley Scott. I'll never have anything to say against Ridley Scott, but I mean, it's not my favourite Ridley Scott movie, put it that way.
That's it. Like, I think one of the fun things I enjoyed with Ridley was that he always goes back to his material and goes, what can I do? And I think one of the things was taking Blade Runner and even trimming more out of it, and it became even better each time. I think that's one of those, the testament to the guy. He likes, like George, likes to go back to look at his art. Sometimes art should be just left and enjoyed for what it is. And then that's it. That's part of it. So that it gets released. But I've got to say, that work print of Blade Runner, the grungy quality, still, to me, to this day, is my second favourite film, next to Star Wars.
Nice.
I love it. It needs to be grungy.
Probably not too far for me either.
Where can the listeners catch up with you guys online?
Collectively we're at Force Material on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can also drop us a line at forcematerial@gmail.com. But the best place to follow us is Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. And we're pretty easy to find as at Force Material.
Well, that wraps up 2018's Fantha Tracks, the Fantha from Down Under. I'm your host, Adam O'Brien, and I wish you happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year as well. And we will see you in 2019 here enjoying Fantha Tracks, both making tracks and, of course, this show here, the Fantha from Down Under, for more Star Wars news, reviews and rumours and more, all on Fantha Tracks Radio. May the Force be with you.